I still hear it when I try to sleep on land, the hollow knock of water against steel like something outside the hull is counting. 3 slow hits. Always 3. That's how I know I'm not done with this. That's why I'm talking into a mic instead of pretending any of this ever made sense. When I was a kid, I didn't sleep in a bedroom. I slept in a forward cabin on a rusted-out trawler that never left the harbor. Most people picture some cute houseboat shit when I say that. Fairy lights, potted plants, Instagram sunset over the water. No, this was a gutted fishing boat tied to the same rotting pier my whole childhood. Flaking blue paint, diesel in the air all the time, slime on the tires we use for fenders. Tide rats, the kind of place that groans when a swell hits like it's sick of staying afloat. It was just me and my mom. She worked the harbor any way she could, but her main thing was survival gear. Life jackets, immersion suits, those big, ugly orange ones you see in safety posters. She patched them for the fleets and sewed new ones when some company wanted them on the cheap. Because of that, we didn't have mannequins exactly, but we had these full-body training dummies. Foam cores, rubber skin, dead glass eyes. Some of them weighted so they'd sink in water. She kept them in the old fish hold she used as a workshop. If you open the hatch and look down at night, you just see them hanging from meat hooks and railings. Limbs bent at wrong angles, orange suits half-zipped, heads tilted. Whole boats stank of neoprene and brine and mold. I wasn't scared of the dark back then. Not really. I was scared of the water pressing around the hull while I was trying to sleep. Scared of the sounds it made when the tide turned. That was bedtime for me. You lie down in your narrow bunk. The hull's a foot from your face on the other side of thin insulation. The porthole is just above your head, rim of greenish glass with a single smeared streak of harbor light. Somewhere below that, 5 meters down, it's just black water full of shit you never see, slapping and sucking at the rust. The pump ticks on and off. Rope creaks. Something thumps under the keel when it drifts just wrong. And sometimes, in that murk of noise, something hits the hull from the outside in a pattern that doesn't sound like waves at all. I told myself for years it was just swell, just passing boats, just my imagination. My mom always said I had bad dreams. She wasn't wrong. I had the usual kid nightmares, teeth falling out, missing stairs, losing her in a crowd. But there were others that felt heavier, like trying to wake up and finding my body still floating slow like I was underwater. It made bedtime a fight every damn night. But what I'm about to tell you, I still don't know if those first times were full dreams or something in between. Half awake, half asleep, but real enough that my brain filed them under memory instead of story. I remember all 3 times clearly. The first time, I went down easy. That's what I remember most. No fight, no begging to stay up, no pretending my stomach hurt. I was tired. Harbor had been busy that day. Somebody'd almost dropped a crate on me on the pier. My mom had thrown a fit. The whole thing wore me out. I crawled into my bunk, listened to the usual water noises, and drifted. Black, then gray, then my eyes were open. I was still in my cabin. You know that feeling when you wake up and something's off, but you can't say what? It was like that at first. Just wrong. The rhythm of the water sounded different. Slower, like the whole boat was holding its breath. The cabin was darker than it had been when I fell asleep. The harbor lights outside had shifted. The porthole was just a faint circle of dirty light, cutting a slice across the opposite wall. That slice is the only reason I saw it. There was someone standing in the middle of my cabin. They weren't moving, not even the slow sway you always do on a boat. Just fixed there, feet apart on the steel deck, filling almost all the space between the edge of my bunk and the door. At first, I thought I was looking at one of Mom's training dummies. My brain reached for that and clung to it, because I'd seen them 1,000 times in the fish hold. But the dummies never came up here. She was strict about that. Bad luck to sleep with the dead weight, she'd say. They stay in the hold. I stared long enough to pick out details. The shape of a torso, arms by its sides, the line of shoulder. No face, not really. That was all in shadow. But the porthole light crossed its chest, and I could see what it was wearing. A top, white, or maybe just pale in the dirty light with dark horizontal bands across it. Thick bands. Black or dark blue, I couldn't tell. Stripes. I knew Mom's work. I closed zippers for her, held fabric, helped pick out thread. She liked solid colors. Orange, red, yellow. High-vis. It's safer at sea. This didn't look like anything of hers. I didn't scream. It's easy from the outside to think you'd yell or bolt or throw something. But I was so full of cold fear that my body did the opposite. I pulled the blanket over my head like I was 5 again, clamped my teeth shut, and tried not to breathe. Rust flakes from the ceiling above my bunk ticked down on the blanket while the boat shifted. The hull gave off one slow groan. Water slapped against steel. The pump clunked once and fell silent again. No footsteps, no breathing, no sound of canvas or rubber. I don't remember falling asleep, but at some point the next thing was sunlight pushing through the porthole and seagulls screaming and my mom banging on the cabin door. "Up," she called. "You're gonna miss breakfast, you little barnacle." The cabin was empty. No figure, no striped anything. I lay there for a second, heart racing in a way that didn't match the normal morning. Dream, I told myself. Just a dream, but it didn't feel like one. I went to the galley anyway, because you don't skip food when you're poor and your mom's been up working on worn-out life jackets since before dawn. She was at the little gas stove, still in her faded blue coveralls, hair wrapped up in a bandana. Smelled like coffee and stale fish and damp canvas. "Hey, Mom," I said, sitting at the scarred table. She handed me a chipped mug first, half coffee, half milk. "Morning. You look like shit. Did you move one of the dummies?" She froze, spatula hovering over the pan. "What?" She didn't do the automatic laugh thing. Her voice went tight. "Did you put one of your training dummies in my cabin?" I asked, like as a joke. She gave it a second. I could see her thinking through it. "No," she shook her head. "Why would I drag those things up just to screw with you?" "I don't know," I said, suddenly embarrassed. "I just thought I saw like a person in my cabin last night, standing in the middle. It was dark, so I couldn't really see their face or anything. Just the clothes." She stared at me. That look parents give you when they're deciding if they need to be worried or if you're just being weird. "What were they wearing?" she asked. I shrugged, played with a rust blister on the table. "Dunno, like a shirt with stripes. White with black stripes or something. I only kind of saw it." Her jaw clenched. "Tiny, but I saw it." She scraped the egg a little too hard. "Sounded like a dream. You let me know if anything else happens. Okay? Anything at all." "Okay," I said. That should have been the end of it. But after I ate, she didn't just shrug it off. I heard her boots on the deck boards overhead, moving faster than usual. The hatch to the fish hold clanged open. Chains rattled. I peeked through the galley window and saw her on deck, smoking hard and staring down through the open hatch like it might stare back. She searched the whole boat that day. Every cabin, the locker where we kept ropes and extra fenders. Even a forepeak, where it always smelled like cat piss from some stray that had claimed it once and never came back. She went into the old engine room and came up dripping with sweat and grease. I heard her cough because the air down there was damp and stale and thick with oil. She didn't like going lower than that. Under the engine room, under the fish hold, there was one more space. An old ballast tank and crawl space, according to her. Some weird combo left over from when the trawler actually worked for a living. You reached it through this narrow manhole in the fish hold. Ladder rungs welded to the inside of the steel. It was always wet down there. Rusty. Smelled like slow rot. We didn't go in there. That was the rule. Too dangerous, Mom said. You slip off a rung, break a leg. Nobody can hear you scream over the pumps. I saw her lift the manhole cover that day, just enough to shine a flashlight beam down. I saw her face come up tight and pale, but she didn't say anything. Just slammed the cover back down, spun it shut, and told me again it was fine. Nothing down there but stale water and bad wiring, she said. I wanted to believe her. For a few days, I did. Those days blur now. Harbor noise. Men arguing on the pier. The slop of passing wakes. Seagulls shitting on everything. Mom sewing under a bare bulb in the hold. Radio crackling out some old rock station. I got through maybe 3 nights before it happened again. The second time, I remember waking up without moving, eyes open, but my body felt pinned. Not paralyzed exactly, but like gravity had doubled and I was sunk into the mattress. The first thing I noticed was the sound. Normally, water under the hull was a constant shuffle. Soft hits, little glugs, the distant cough of our neighbor's generator. That night it was too quiet. Then I heard it. Drip. Pause. Drip. But it wasn't above me, where the condensation from the metal ceiling sometimes formed and fell. It wasn't at the porthole, where rain might leak if the gasket was acting up. It was under me, right under the thin mattress, down in the compartment below my cabin, like water was landing on bare metal and echoing up through the bunk frame. I stared at the porthole. The faint band of harbor light was lower, more green. Tide was in. The boat had a different tilt. I tried to lift my head and couldn't. The drip kept going. Finally, I rolled my eyes sideways toward the cabin door. He was closer this time, not in the middle of the cabin, sitting. Whoever, whatever, it was perched on a little built-in bench opposite my bunk. The one I kept my duffel on. The one with the life jacket hanging on a hook above it. Shadow swallowed most of the body, but the porthole light snagged stripes again. Horizontal, crossing the chest and arms. The fabric looked slick. Vet. Between the stripes, the pale parts shone like the skin of a fish belly dragged from cold water. His head, yeah, this time I thought of it as his, was tilted down. I couldn't see his face. Just a round dome of it, like someone had shaven bald or he was in some kind of helmet. He was dripping. That's what the sound was. Water falling off him, down onto the metal deck, soaking into a small dark puddle under his boots. The smell hit me a second later. Not just the usual harbor funk. Sharper, like iron and old algae, like something that had been underwater way too long. Same smell when they'd haul a net full of dead fish and rusted garbage up onto the pier. The bunk dug into my ribs. My fingers twitched. My tongue felt thick and dry. I didn't scream this time either. I couldn't. My lungs wouldn't pull enough air. The boat gave a slow rock as another boat passed outside, and the porthole light moved. It slid up across his chest, across the stripes, up the curve of his head. For one fraction of a second, the light cut across where his face should be. There was nothing there. Not a blank face. Not a doll's face. Just absence. A hole the light went into, but didn't come out of. Like I was looking at a shadow, punched in midair, deeper than the cabin, deeper than the hull, a little slice of open water right there in front of me. Every hair on my arms lifted. The bunk creaked under me. I wrenched my head back toward the wall, squeezed my eyes shut, and yanked the blanket over myself with everything I had. My muscles stung like I'd been running. My heart hammered so loud it felt like it might shake the boat. The drip kept going. Drip, drip, drip. At some point, the rhythm faded into the regular harbor noise. The pump kicked on. Someone shouted on the pier. A truck engine started up nearby. I woke up to sunlight again, stuck to my sheets with sweat, throat raw. The bench across from me was empty. No puddle on the floor. No wet footprints. No smell, except old socks and diesel. I got up on shaky legs and checked anyway. Ran my fingers over the deck where the puddle had been. Dry, but there was a faint ring of something darker around the spot, like the metal there had rusted faster than the rest. I almost said nothing. You don't want to be the crazy kid muttering about wet ghosts on a boat full of people who already think harbor kids are a problem. You keep weird stuff inside until it poisons you. Mom broke first. She came into my cabin mid-morning while I was pretending to clean and actually just rereading the same dog-eared comic. She leaned against the doorframe, arms folded, mouth tight. "You had another dream, didn't you?" she said. Not a question. "Istir de here." Why would you say that? Because you're jumpy as a stray cat, and you're not eating right, and you keep looking at that spot there like it offended you. She nodded at the bench. I swallowed. I saw it again, I said. "What did you see?" Her voice got softer. Not comforting, more focused. Like she was taking a report on deck damage. "The same guy, I guess. Same thing." I flailed for words. In my cabin, sitting on the bench, dripping wet. I couldn't move. I think I was awake, but I couldn't move. Her eyes flicked to the porthole, then back to me. And it was wearing the same shirt, I said. White with black stripes. Or suit. I don't know. It's hard to tell in the dark. But the stripes look like the ones on that suit you made. The weird one. I didn't make a weird one, she said automatically, then stopped. Which one do you mean? The one that was hanging in the hole the other day, I said, with the thick black bands. I saw it when I brought you coffee. It was on the dummy by the ladder. Her face went still, every muscle in it. We don't have a striped suit, she said. Je vedo, he insisted. You were working on it last week. You had that spool of black webbing, and you said you hated how the stripes lined up. I was talking about seam tape, she snapped. Then she caught herself, breath shaky. Look at me. I did. Listen, she said quietly. All our suits are solid color. The Coast Guard wants high visibility. Orange, red, or yellow. No pattern. No dark colors. No stripes. I do repair work when they rip, but I've never put dark bands across a suit. Never. You understand? My stomach dropped. She must have seen it on my face, because she cursed under her breath, pushed off the doorframe, and raked a hand through her hair. Okay, she said. Okay, that's enough. Enough what? I asked. Enough of this damn leak, she said, but I didn't think she meant water. Come on. She grabbed my wrist and hauled me with her down the narrow passage to the fish hold. The training dummies were hanging just where they always did. Orange shells, some patched, some brand new. A couple of old ones slumped on the deck, half out of their suits, deflated. No stripes. She made me walk past each one, hand on my shoulder, making sure I saw. Then she marched me over to the manhole cover in the corner. I checked it after you told me about the first time, she said. I'm checking again. I want you to see. She unspun the dogs and lifted the hatch. Wet air breathed out. Cold. Smelled like rust and something stale and old, like a pond that never saw daylight. She flicked on a flashlight and shone it down. I stepped closer, even though everything in me wanted to back away. The beam caught the ladder rungs bolted to the steel, going down into dark. You could see where water had sloshed up the sides at some point. There was a line of crusted salt and slime around the middle. Below that, it was just black. Hello. Mom called down, voice flat and angry. Anyone stupid enough to be squatting in my ballast tank? Her voice bounced back up, warped by the space. We both listened. Nothing. No movement. No water stir. Just a faint tick of something dripping far below, so faint I could barely hear it. She shut the hatch hard, spun it closed, and latched it. See, she said. Empty. Then why is it wet? I asked. Because we live on the damn water, she snapped. Then softer. Because the hull sweats, kiddo. Because there's always a leak somewhere. That's how it is. That's all. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But that night, I lay in my bunk staring at the ceiling, counting every sound. The hum of the shore power cable. The clink of halyards on the mast of the sailboat moored behind us. Rats scrabbling in the wall. Water hitting steel. And under all of it, down in the steel bones of the boat, one slow, steady drip. I try not to think about the striped suit I remembered. Try not to think about the ring of darker rust on my floor. Try not to picture that hole where a face should be. About a week after the second time, I almost convinced myself it had stopped. I got a few half-decent nights in. Woke up without feeling like I'd been strangled. Didn't see anything in my cabin except my own dumb reflection in the porthole, warped by the glass. Then the third time hit like someone had been waiting for me to let my guard down. I'd gone to sleep early. Harbor was quiet. Some storm had rolled through earlier, so most of the boats had extra lines out. The world felt muffled. You could hear the slap of water against the pilings clear as breathing. I remember the dream I was having. That's how I know it got interrupted. I was swimming in clear water. Not harbor water, this was open sea in my head. Blue and endless. Sunlight on the surface above. Fish flicking past below. I felt light. Strong. Not scared. Then something touched my ankle. Not a fish. A hand. I jerked awake. The first thing I heard was the crash. Metal on metal, too loud for the tiny cabin. I flinched hard enough to hit my head on the wall. My alarm clock had hit the deck. It was this cheap little digital thing with a blue backlight. Mom had bolted a tiny shelf above my bunk to keep it from sliding when the boat rocked. I was careful with it. It was one of the few new things I'd ever owned. It shouldn't have fallen. The boat wasn't moving enough for that. I could feel that, even half asleep. We were steady. Tide slack. So why the hell was my alarm clock on the floor? It was still on. The blue backlight glowed where it had landed near the foot of my bunk, throwing a sick little circle of light across the deck. I lifted the blanket and leaned over the edge of the mattress to grab it. That's the moment that never leaves me. The glow from the clock didn't just hit the deck. It lit up what was sticking out from under my bunk. An arm, not severed, not alone. There was a shoulder, too, pressed up against the bunk frame. The rest of the body was tucked under, squeezed into that dark space I'd shoved extra blankets and shoes into. The arm was stretched just far enough out that the hand almost touched the clock, like it had dropped it or pushed it. The sleeve was white with thick, dark horizontal bands. My brain did this stupid thing where it tried to turn it into something normal. Rope, extra jacket, life jacket strap, anything, but the shape of the hand killed that. It was gloved, thick, neoprene-looking, like the diving gloves the older boys on the pier wore when they cleaned hulls. Only the fingers were wrong. Too long, too straight, and there were too many creases where there shouldn't have been joints. The hand twitched, just the smallest flex like it had been surprised. I made a sound then, some choked animal noise that didn't sound like me, and jerked back so hard I slammed my shoulders into the wall behind me. The bunk frame rattled. The whole cabin seemed to jump. I yanked the blanket over my head again because apparently that's my survival instinct and curled into a ball. My heart was hammering so hard it hurt. I could taste metal in my mouth. My ears were full of the rush of my own blood and, under that, the slow creak of the hull. I waited for the arm to grab me, to yank me off the bunk, to pull me down. It didn't. The boat shifted once, gently. Somewhere in the guts of the hull, something knocked 3 times. Not like waves. Not random. 3 slow, evenly spaced hits. I'd heard that pattern before, but never that loud. After that, I don't remember anything. There's a gap, like somebody edited the tape. 1 second I'm under the blanket, crying like a little kid, ears ringing, and the next it's morning and Mom's swearing loud enough to shake rust off the bulkheads. I stumbled into the galley, exhausted and nauseous. She wasn't at the stove. She was at the aft hatch, looking out toward the pier, one hand white-knuckled on the frame. "You gotta be kidding me," she was muttering. "You gotta be fucking kidding me." "What?" I croaked. She flinched, turned on me with her eyes already hot. "What?" I repeated, scared of the answer. "Some goddamn animal, that's what," she snapped. "Or some drunk asshole. Broke one of the portholes on the lower deck. There's glass all over the ballast access. Could have sunk us if the tide was higher." My stomach twisted. "Which porthole?" I asked. "The one in the crawl space," she said. "The one nobody's supposed to touch. Looks like somebody hit it with a rock or a boot or something from the outside." I got a slick of harbor shit all over my ladder now. She was pacing as she talked, bare feet slapping on the deck. "And I can't afford to haul this tub just to fix a damn porthole. They'll charge me for the crane, for the yard time, for the glass, for the diver. What if whatever broke it is still in there?" I blurted. She stopped. "What?" "You said there's glass by the ladder," I said. "What if something came in? You think a seal broke my glass and climbed a ladder?" She snapped. Then softer, I checked. Soon as I saw the mess. Nothing in the tank. Just water and slime, and my nerves shot to hell. I wanted to tell her everything right then. About the arm under my bunk. About the wet stripes. About the knocks. It all pressed up behind my teeth. She saw it. "What?" she demanded. "Spit it out." "I saw it again," I said. Voice thin. I saw him. The man. Under my bunk. Wearing the same striped thing. His hand was I couldn't finish. "You said if anything else." I started. She rubbed her face hard, like she could scrub the irritation off. "You dream about this a lot," she said. "I was awake," I insisted. "Do you remember anything else?" she asked, resigned. "Besides him and the bunk." "The clock fell," I said. "It was on the shelf, then it just dropped. And his hand was right there, like he'd pushed it or tried to grab it." She went quiet, really quiet. Her eyes tracked past me to my cabin door. I could see her doing the geometry in her head. Position of my bunk, distance to the hull, distance to the ballast tank, the broken porthole, the rise of tide in the night. He was wearing the same shirt, I heard myself say, the one with the black stripes. "Like your suit." "My what?" she asked too fast. "The striped suit," I said. "The one you said you hated, with the black bands. The one you were working on in the hold." She stared at me like I'd seen her grow a second head. Then she grabbed my arm. "We're leaving," she said. "What? What?" I stumbled after as she dragged me toward my cabin. "I thought you couldn't afford to." "We're leaving," she repeated, voice flat. "Get your bag, clothes, anything you can carry in 5 minutes. The rest can rot." "Mom, you're scaring me." "Good," she said. "You should be scared. Hurry the hell up." I'd seen her pissed plenty of times. I'd never seen her like that. Pale under her tan, eyes too bright, mouth thin. "Tell me what's going on," I insisted, digging my heels in. She spun on me so fast, I almost ran into her. "You said stripes," she hissed. "You said black bands. You said it was wearing something I made." "Yeah. I told you," she said. "I don't make striped suits. I never have. Nobody I work for wants them. You know what happens to anything that isn't high-vis out there." I shook my head, confused and crying now. "People die," she snapped. "They get hit by boats because nobody can see them. That's why there are regulations." "So," I whispered, "so if you're seeing something in that cabin wearing a striped top, it's not wearing anything I put on it," she said. "And it's not coming from this boat. You think it came from a water?" I asked before I could stop myself. She swallowed. "What broke that glass last night wasn't a fucking raccoon," she said. "The tank filled up 1/2 meter and then drained again before dawn. Something big moved in the water under us. I felt it." "You checked," I said weakly. "You said there was nothing." "I checked after," she said. "After the tide went out. After whatever was had time to get back out the way it came in." Her grip on my arm tightened. "We are not staying on a half-sunk relic that something can crawl into from underneath," she said. "I don't care if I have to sleep in the damn harbor office. Get your bag." There wasn't time to argue after that. We moved fast. I threw clothes into my duffel with shaking hands. Grabbed my one good hoodie, my comics, my toothbrush, my cheap little alarm clock with a cracked corner. I couldn't stop glancing at the gap under my bunk. Nothing there, just dust and an old sock. Still, I kept my feet tucked up until the last possible second. Mom hustled me off the boat, across the flexing gangplank, onto the solid boards of the pier. The whole time, I could feel the water below, black and shifting, sucking at the pilings. I didn't look back until we were in our old car, doors shut, windows rolled up even though the glass was fogged from our breath. The trawler sat a few meters away, tied off like it had been 1,000 times before. It looked small from shore, harmless, just another old boat somebody should have cut up for scrap. The tide was coming in. The water around the hull was darker. For a second, as the car turned and the bow swung out of view, I thought I saw something. A hand on the inside of my cabin porthole. Just a smear, just a shape, white, with dark bands. We moved out that same day. We didn't go far. People picture us racing off inland, buying a little house in some dry suburb, leaving the harbor and all that shit behind. We didn't have the money for that, or options. Mom drove all of 3 minutes down the waterfront, parked under this sagging concrete overhang by the harbor office, and marched me inside like she was storming a bridge. The whole building smelled like old coffee and tide. The floor creaked even though it was poured concrete, because underneath it was hollow, pilings and beams and dark water slapping at the underside. That's where the harbor manager put us, in a storage room they called a bunk room right over the pilings. 2 cots, 1 tiny porthole, cheap paneling sweating from the constant damp. The first night, she wedged a chair under the doorknob. "You're doing too much," I told her. "Nobody's gonna break into a storage room." She gave me a look. "You think I'm worried about somebody coming in?" I shut up. The porthole looked out over the inner basin. I lay there staring at boats instead of the ceiling. Our old trawler, still tied where we left it. The neighbor's sailboat, a couple of crabbers, a small research vessel with a white hull and a big black number on the bow. Our boat looked wrong from the outside now. The water around its hull had this strange shade, darker than it should have been, like the shadow underneath didn't match the others. Every swell that rolled through made it rock just a hair slower than its neighbors, like the water under it was thicker. "Mom," I said because I could feel her awake on the other cot, grinding her teeth. "What are you going to do with her?" She blew out a breath. "Sell what's left, or have them drag it to the breakers. I don't know. She's not our problem anymore. She's our home," I said automatically. She corrected. "Now she's a hole things can crawl through. Go to sleep." The whole building made these tiny sounds all night. Pops, ticks, little shudders when a bigger wake hit, like the pilings were shifting under us. You could hear the water right below the floor sometimes. A hollow slap of waves against wood, the weird filter of it traveling up through beams. I was almost asleep when it came. Not a dream. I know the difference now. 3 knocks. Not on the hull of a boat this time. On the floor, right under my cot. Deep and dull, like someone took a fist and hit the underside of the concrete where it hung over the water. The cot jumped. "Mom," I whispered. "I heard it," she said. Something in her voice made the skin on my arms go tight. We stayed like that, breathing, listening. No footsteps in the hall. No voices outside. Just the quiet slap of water and the hum of some compressor in the next room. Then, drip. I thought it was my imagination at first. The whole damn harbor drips. But this was close. Cold splashed my cheek. I flinched and wiped at it. My fingers came away wet. In the faint light from the emergency exit sign in the hallway, I watched a single bead of water grow on the paneling above my head and then fall. The ceiling shouldn't have been wet. There were no pipes above us. Nothing. "Don't move," Mom said. Another drop swelled, fat and slow, right over my face, right in line with where that thing would have been standing in my cabin. It hung there like it was deciding. Then it slid sideways. Not down, sideways. It crawled along the seams of the paneling, tracing this pattern. Horizontal line, stop, another line below it. Like the paneling itself was sweating stripes out of nothing. My chest locked. "Mom," I whispered. "It's here." "Shut your eyes," she said. "Don't look at it. Just don't look." Her voice shook. I shut my eyes eventually, but not before I saw something pale move outside the porthole. Not a face, just a suggestion of shape sliding through the black water just under the surface. In the morning, the ceiling was dry. The harbor manager bitched that our room smelled like wet dog now. But that's what you get for living on top of the damn sea. And you're lucky I'm not charging you extra. Mom sold the boat for scrap a week later. I watched from the pier as the crane hooked her and hauled her up. Water poured out of her scuppers and drains. A whole lifetime of harbor filth cascading back into the basin. For 1 second, the underside of the hull was fully out of the water. You never really see that, not from that angle. All that slimy green and brown, the barnacles and weed, props crusted with growth. Right in the middle, where the ballast tank sat, there was a patch the size of a man's torso that looked cleaner. Not shiny, just less fouled. The barnacles that were arranged in these weird, imperfect bands. Pale, dark like stripes. I squinted, leaned out over the railing. Then the crane swung her away and set her on the barge, and men with torches started cutting. "Don't," Mom said, grabbing my collar when I tried to watch more. "Don't give it the satisfaction. You think it's still in there?" I asked. "I think whatever it was knows our smell now," she said. "And I think the water's where it lives, not the steel. So no, we didn't leave it on the boat. Where is it then?" She didn't answer. She just looked at the basin at the slick the boat left, at the way the water shivered, even though no boat was moving nearby. We stayed in that bunk room for another few months, because it's hard as hell to climb out of the hole when you live off piecework and harbor favors. I didn't see the thing again, but the water never felt neutral after that. Every time I walked down a pier, every time I stood on the breakwater, every time I crossed the narrow metal gangway to any other boat, I couldn't shake the idea that if I dropped something over the side, a wrench, a coin, a piece of trash, it wouldn't just sink into random darkness. It would land on something that was already down there, waiting. The knocks faded. Life got louder again. The harbor is good at that, burying weirdness under noise. Fights, engines, music, gulls, drunks singing bad sea songs. By the time I was 17, if you'd asked me, I would have called it a fucked up set of childhood nightmares. Same way people talk about monsters in their closet. Except I didn't leave the water. What else was I going to do? I didn't know how to exist without the taste of salt on my lips, without deck under my feet, without that constant push and pull under every step. Mom wanted something else for me. Of course she did. You could go inland, she said. Study something that doesn't rust. Computers. Airplanes. I don't care. Just not this. You work with immersion suits, I said. Your hands literally smell like neoprene. You think I'm gonna go sit in some dry office park after that? I think you don't have to get stuck in the same rot as me, she snapped. I patched the holes so other people can go drown for money. That doesn't mean you have to be one of them. What if I don't drown? I asked. She flinched like I'd slapped her. We didn't talk for almost a week after I told her I'd enlisted. I went into the Navy. It was the only way I was ever going to touch anything beyond our shitty harbor without paying for a ticket I couldn't afford. At least this way they fed me and gave me a bunk. I told her I'd try to get a shore job. Elite, or half-lied. I put sonar tech as my first choice. It's just sound, I said when she finally forced me to explain. I'll be the guy listening. I won't even get wet. You'll be in a tube under God knows how many tons of water, she said. You think that's not getting wet? We yelled. We said things we shouldn't have. She told me if I came home a box, she'd kick my ghost's ass. I told her I wasn't scared of the dark anymore. That was bullshit. Boot camp was whatever. Hard, loud, predictable. I was in the best shape of my life and the farthest from home I'd ever been, but the only water I touched was in the pool and in the showers, and nothing knocked from underneath. I kept waiting for it, though. Every time I slid into a training pool with 10 other idiots, I'd feel the tile bottom under my feet and think about the difference between that and a hole. About how if something knocked here, it'd have to come through concrete and rebar instead of a thin layer of rust. Then I'd force the thought away and focus on not drowning during yet another time swim. By the time they stuck me on an actual boat, I'd almost convinced myself that my childhood had been this long, slow panic attack and nothing more. The boat wasn't a trawler. It wasn't even close. The first time I walked up to the gangway, the sub just sat there in the water like a black cutout of itself. No masts, no netches, no cloutier. Just a dark, curved hull, a sail like a fin, and a slick around it where it carved the harbor surface away from itself. They call them boats, but submarines aren't boats. They're pressure tubes with engines and very small margins for error. You feel that as soon as you step on board. Metal everywhere. Tight spaces. No windows. The air tastes like recycled sweat and machine oil. Every sound runs through the hull and into your bones. They stuck me in sonar like I'd asked. Imagine standing in a little cave full of screens and dials and LEDs. No natural light. Just this constant, intimate clicking and pinging and hissing. You're in the bow, noses pointed wherever the captain wants to go, and your ears are how he sees. It's worked for navies a long time. Bounce sound off shit, listen to what comes back, decide if that blob is a rock, a whale, a cargo ship, or someone pointing a torpedo at you. I was good at it, probably because I'd grown up listening to water talk to steel. First patrol was fine. We did the usual run, down the coast, out into blue water, some lazy loops around areas full of other people's secrets. Sonar picked up shrimp beds, merchant traffic, the occasional pod of dolphins. I learned to tell rain from wavelets, whales from screws, the subtle difference between a passing container ship and a storm of distant thunder. I started to relax. You know where this is going. Middle of the second patrol, we were deep. I can't say where. Even now, after all this time, I don't think I'm supposed to say. Call it somewhere cold and deep as fuck. We've been running quiet for hours. No active pings, just passive. Just listening. Crew settled into that weird sub-rhythm. You're always either at work, sleeping, or pretending to sleep. The hull creaks like an old tree. Every once in a while you feel this subtle shudder as the boat adjusts depth or trim, like a big animal twitching in its sleep. I had headphones on, staring at my Spectrum display. Mostly it was noise. The ocean is loud when you know how to listen. Distant surf, whale songs, low and mournful. Occasionally, some sharp spike of noise when something dropped from the surface. Then I heard it. 3 spikes. 3 perfect, evenly spaced thumps in the soundscape. Not loud. Not like depth charges. Not like anything aggressive. Just there. I glanced at the other tech. You hear that? He frowned, leaned in. Hear what? There was nothing on the display but the usual sea fuzz. I swear I started, then shut up because you don't want to be the new guy hearing ghosts and background noise. Your kid brain showing, he joked, not knowing how close he was. Harbor rats always think there's something knocking on the hull. I laughed it off. An hour later, it happened again. 3 thumps. I put it down to my own heartbeat that time, or something in the boat, shifting rhythm. Stuff down there expands and contracts all the time. Pipes ducting your own skull. We dog-legged, changed depth, did all the boring underwater stuff you do on patrol. I caught naps when I could, ate food that all tasted like metal, try not to think about how much water was above us. Nights and days don't mean shit down there, but midnight in the log is when most people are at their worst. Tired, wired, mind's wandering. That's when it had me on headphones again. Red lights. Dim, just enough to see the station. Everybody talks in low voices because it feels like the boat will break if you're loud. Routine. Then something hit the hull. Everyone felt it. You don't mistake that. It wasn't something in the sonar noise. It was in your teeth. This deep, physical boom that went through the deck and up your legs. Boom. Pause. Boom. Pause. Boom. Everything in the compartment shook. Contact, the watch officer snapped. Sonar lit up for real this time. Not the pretty waterfall display you see in movies, just a couple of bright returns slamming up the screen where nothing should have been. Bearing 063, someone called. Range shit, that can't be right. Range 0. You never want to hear that. Range 0 means whatever you're hearing is you. Everyone tensed. Captain got called. Orders snapped back and forth. Somebody suggested a submerged log impact. Somebody else said, maybe a container. Both of those things can kill you down there. We went as silent running while they figured out if we were leaking. In the middle of the chaos, the boat shuddered again. Just a little, like something outside had adjusted its grip. I sat there with my headphones on, sweating, listening to the thick silence, my finger hovering over the gain knob. No more thumps, just the tiny, crawling sounds of the hull flexing. When the captain finally spoke over the general announcing circuit, his voice was calm. We might have contacted an object, he said. No sign of damage yet. Maintain station. We'll do a full inspection when we're back in safe water. He sounded like he believed it. I almost did. Then I went to my rack. Space is tight on a sub. You don't get a cabin. You get a bed that folds up, a tiny shelf, maybe a little locker if you're lucky. No portoles. Just pipe runs over your head and the constant hum of the systems that keep you breathing. I lay there staring at the bunk above me, tracing condensation beads with my eyes while they grew and fell. At some point, I drifted. I woke up to water again. Drip, drip. It wasn't the condensation this time. That stuff falls randomly. This was steady, rhythmic, hitting the edge of my pillow. I opened my eyes and saw a line of water gathering along a pipe seam directly over my chest. The pipe shouldn't have been wet. The casing was insulated. Dry. Above that was another compartment, not a tank. I held my breath and squinted. The water didn't fall straight down. It crept along the pipe, left then right then down, tracing bands. Light from a night bulb caught it in streaks. There, dark. There, dark. Stripes. I blinked hard. For a second, I saw something else. Not just water. The suggestion of a forearm pressed to the underside of the bunk above me, hand dangling near my face. A sleeve around it, too tight over bloated muscle, white with black bands. I slammed my eyes shut. Fuck, I whispered, barely audible. Something shifted in the pipe overhead. A little groan. A muffled thump like fingers tapping metal from the inside. Knock, knock, knock. Exactly 3. No one else woke up. The breathing around me stayed slow. Somebody snored. The boat hummed. I didn't sleep again that off watch. Morning, whatever morning is in a steel tube, brought more normal panic. They'd found moisture somewhere it shouldn't be. A petty officer dragged me out of the mess deck mid-bite. "Hey, sonar boy," he said. "You hear anything weird last night? I mean, aside from the hull contact?" I asked. He grimaced. "You talk like an officer. What's going on?" I asked. We ducked through 3 hatches and stopped at a manhole in the deck. The cover was off. A shaft dropped into darkness. "Ballast compartment picked up half a meter of water," he said. "That's normal when you ram something. What's not normal is it draining when we didn't shift any tanks." The ladder down was slick with brine. The smell coming out was wrong. I'd grown up in that smell. Bilge LG rushed. This had that, but under it was something sharper, like the tang in the air after a lightning strike. Like blood in deep ocean. "You think we punctured something?" I asked. He gave me a look. "We're still here, aren't we?" "Maybe the object scraped us," I said. "Yeah," he said. "Maybe. You can't just empty a compartment at depth and go for a stroll." They had to run the numbers, talk to the captain, figure out if it was worth venting air and water to equalize pressure. In the meantime, they stuck a maintenance kid halfway down with a flashlight and a CO2 meter to see if we were slowly suffocating or not. When they hauled him up, he was white as paint. "What did you see?" someone asked. "Nothing," he said. "Just water lines." Rushed. A lot of handprint-looking shit. He swallowed, like somebody'd been down there wearing gloves, touching everything. The compartment was supposedly sealed. No one had gone down since before patrol. The chief forced a laugh. "Just patterns in the corrosion, kid. Don't piss your pants." They kept saying shit like that. Just sonar ghosts. Just stress. Just a long patrol. But every time we went quiet, every time we settled at a new depth, I heard something. 3 knocks. Sometimes so faint I could convince myself it was just the hull stretching. Sometimes loud enough that coffee shook in cups. The other techs started noticing weird blips in the data too. Transient, bearing 270. Faint. We'd log it, cross-check it, try to match it to known shipping, to fish, to anything. Nothing lined up. It was always in the same place relative to us. 0 range. Ghost on the hull. I held it together as long as I could. I told myself I was a kid spooking at shadows. I told myself a lot of things. It all kind of blew up on a night when I should have kept my mouth shut. We've been out for weeks. Tired doesn't even begin to cover it. The kind of bone-deep exhaustion where your thoughts feel like they're moving through cold syrup. I was on watch with a senior tech. Let's call him Harris. Big guy, buzz cut, the kind of asshole you have to be a little scared of to respect. He had his headphones mostly off, resting around his neck. Nothing much was happening. The captain was pacing slow, pretending it didn't make people nervous. Then the ghost hit us again. 3 knocks, hard enough that I saw a ripple on the water bottles strapped to the bulkhead. My display flared. A bright smear jumped up along our own track, not from another object. It rode our motion perfectly for maybe 3 seconds, like something massive was stuck to our underside, reflecting our own noise back at us with a slight delay. "What the fuck is that?" I blurted. Harris sat up. "Mark it." "I am," I said, hands flying over the controls. "Bearing. Shit, bearing is 0. Range. Range 0, he finished grimly. The captain stepped closer. Talk to me. We're getting a weird contact on our own hull, Harris said smoothly. Probably turbulence from the collision. Signatures en consiste. Is there any chance something's attached? The captain asked. My mouth moved before I could stop it. Yes, I said. Sir, whatever hit us might still be. Harris's elbow hit me in the ribs. Transient's already gone, he said. Sea's noisy. Recommend we log it and keep an eye on the tank levels. Do that, the captain said. His eyes lingered on me a second too long. And don't jump at phantoms, gentlemen. We're not in Scooby-Doo. Everyone chuckled, even though nothing was funny. I glared at Harris once the captain moved away. Why'd you cut me off? You want to start telling the old man there's a sea monster stuck to his boat? He muttered. You want a psych eval that bad? You saw it, I hissed. You heard it. He sighed. I saw noise. I heard the boat hitting itself. You start calling it anything else, you're the noise. You can't just ignore it, I said. I can, he said. And so can you. Or you could go talk to the doc about how the deep is whispering in your ear. Your call. We went back and forth like that for a while. I got hot. He got hotter. Voices rose. The watch officer shut us down with a look. By the time my rack period came around, my hand was still shaking. Almost nobody on that boat knew where I grew up. I didn't tell people I'd slept in a trawler as a kid. You get enough shit already without adding dock rat to it. But lying there in my rack, staring at the pipes, listening for the drip, I thought about that broken porthole. That ring of darker rust. The stripes of barnacles under our old hull. I thought about the way the water in the ballast tank had gone up and down on its own. And I thought, maybe it never left. Maybe when it broke the glass and oozed into that old steel, whatever it was, it figured something out. Found a new way to follow. Our trawler got hauled up and cut, and it went right back into the water, slithered into whatever gap it could find under some other hull. Some other confined space. I'd joined the Navy. I'd literally signed up to live in metal cylinders surrounded by water. Of course, it found me again. The next time it really showed itself, there were cameras involved. We were in slightly shallower water by then, though shallower still meant a couple 100 meters. Enough above you to crush. Enough below you to never see the bottom. The captain ordered an external inspection. Nothing too dramatic. Just a routine ROV run to check a couple of fittings and satisfy his own curiosity. The drone went out on its tether like a little mechanical squid, cameras rolling. On the control screen in the ops room, you could see the hull curve past in gray and black, lit by the ROV's lamps. Patches of scuff, lines of weld, nothing unusual. I stood behind the operator, arms folded, trying to pretend I wasn't watching like my life depended on it. They ran along the keel. That part always freaked me out. Just this vast, dark shape hanging over blackness, lit in little slices. The hull above, the abyss below. Keel looks good, the operator muttered. Minor fouling. No visible vericis. Then something moved in the frame. Just a flicker. The operator frowned, thumb easing off the thruster. Did you see that? Hold, the captain said. He leaned in. Go back a meter. The ROV backed up. Lights washed over the same stretch of hull. At first, all I saw was toughness. A couple of long scratches where something had scraped us. Smeared tracks in slime. Then I realized the smears were parallel. Thick, band-like, dark, pale, dark, pale. 4 of them, wrapping partway around the hull. Looks like scoring, the exec said. It's in lines, I said before I could stop myself. Like fingers. Everyone ignored me. The operator pushed the ROV closer. The picture grain broke down. The stripes dissolved into pixels and noise up close. He backed off again, trying to find sweet spot. That's when the camera caught it, right at the edge of the light. Below the keel, in that black space where nothing should be but water, there was a hint of shape. Not a full figure, not even a head, just an angle that didn't match the rest. A curve that looked too round, too knowing. Then the lights flickered, not the ROV, the whole room. Everything dimmed for a second. The screens went snowy. Speakers hissed. When the picture came back, the ROV camera was pointed into empty water. "What the hell was that?" the operator said. "Power fluctuation," someone offered. "In the middle of the damn ocean," somebody else muttered. We brought the ROV back. No damage. No weird growth. No nothing. I asked the operator later, in the mess, if he'd seen the shape. He shut me down before I finished the sentence. "Nope," he said. "We saw some turbulence, maybe a shadow. That's it. It looked like." I said, "That's it," he repeated. "Drop it, Camden." I never told him my mom's name. Hearing my last name in his mouth like that felt like a slap. Why is everybody pretending it's not happening? I snapped. "You all felt those hits. You saw the tank levels jump. You saw the..." He slammed his tray down, silverware jumping. "Because," he hissed, leaning in, "out here, in here, we don't get to be scared of ghosts. You want to be scared of something? Be scared of valves failing, of fires, of some asshole forgetting to shut a hatch. Sound I can fix. Metal I can patch. There's no procedure for something wants to hitch a ride on the hull, so as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't exist." We stared each other down. Finally, he shook his head and went back to his food. I didn't. I wasn't hungry anymore. Weeks blurred. Patrol ended. We went back to port. Submarines don't parade in a harbor like big gray heroes. They slide in quiet, tie up, and suddenly you're back where you can see sky and smell exhaust instead of scrubbed air. They gave us a few days leave. I went home. Home wasn't a boat anymore. By then, Mom had managed to claw her way into a little apartment above a dive shop right on the waterfront. Still damp. Still smelled like neoprene and old salt. But the walls were brick instead of steel, and if something knocked on them, you could tell yourself it was the neighbor. She hugged me like she thought I might fall through the floor if she let go. "You look like shit," she said, which, to be fair, was true. "Good to see you too," I said. We argued within an hour. She'd sworn she'd never talk to me again when she found out I'd gone under instead of staying on the surface. But there I was, standing in her kitchen while she boiled water in a kettle that screamed like incoming torpedoes. "You asked for this," she said, slamming mugs around. "You went from one fucking hull to another." "I'm not a kid in a trawler anymore," I said. "I am trained. I have a crew. I have procedures." "Do your procedures cover things that knock from the outside?" she shot back. I froze. She stared at me. "You think I don't know you?" she demanded. "You came in the door smelling like the Navy and bad dreams. Don't lie to me." I sat down hard on one of the wobbly chairs. "It's back," I said. She closed her eyes. "Tell me," she said. I told her about the knocks. The ghost contact. The ballast tank. The water crawling in stripes along the pipes. I left out some things. The arm of my childhood cabin. The faceless head. The part where I'd started talking to it under my breath, half curse, half prayer, when the hull groaned too loud. She listened without interrupting. Hands wrapped around the mug until her knuckles went white. When I finished, she got up, walked over to the window, and stared out at the bay. Ships everywhere. Ferries, tugs, tankers. All those fat metal bellies sitting in the water like bait. "You remember when I told you we don't go in the ballast tank?" she asked. "Because it's dangerous," I said. "Rust, bad footing, all that." "That was part of it," she said. "The other part was it always felt wrong. Like there wasn't enough air in there. Like someone had just left and you were breathing their exhale. That's not." I started, then stopped because it was exactly how that subcompartment had smelled. "I checked it after you told me about the first time," she said. "On the trawler. I checked it again after the glass broke. I told you it was empty. You didn't lie." I asked. "I didn't see anybody in there," she said. "But the ladder rungs were wet. Higher than they should have been. Like something had climbed up and stopped." "Stopped where?" She swallowed. "At the level of your cabin. A fairy horn blew outside, long and low. The whole apartment shuddered. I thought about pressure equalization, about water moving in and out of spaces, about doors and hatches and glass. You think it got in and couldn't get all the way up?" I asked. "So it reached where it could, through the steel, or through something we don't understand?" she said. "I don't know." "That helps," I muttered. "What do you want me to say?" she snapped. "That it's all in your head?" You know that's bullshit. You saw it before I ever said anything. You smelled it. I did too. We stared at each other, two people who'd both spent their entire lives around water, and were suddenly aware that there was something in it we weren't taught about. You still have that clock? She asked suddenly. What? The little blue one, she said. The one that fell off your shelf that night. I frowned. Yeah, it's on my rack. What? She took a deep breath. Don't sleep with it next to your head anymore. That's the lesson you're taking from all this? I scoffed. Don't keep clocks. It touched that thing, she said quietly. I shut up. We spent the rest of my leave dancing around the subject. Every argument about anything ended up back there. The water, the thing, my choice to keep my life under the surface. You could discharge, she said, and go work on a cruise ship. I said, stay above the waterline? That makes you feel better. Nothing makes me feel better, she said. I don't want you in a box that can knock on. I'm good at my job, I said. It's the first thing I've ever been good at that someone will actually pay me for. Yeah, she said bitterly. You're good at listening to the water. We didn't fix anything. We just ran out of time. I went back to the boat. The next patrol was supposed to be routine. You can hear the lie in that sentence, can't you? We dropped below the thermocline and everything got muffled. The surface world faded. No more storm noise, no more ship engines, just the slow heartbeats of the deep and our own mechanical sighs. For a while, it was almost peaceful. I'd stopped telling anyone when I heard the knocks. What was the point? It only made people look at me sideways and send me to the medic to ask how I was sleeping. Bad. I told her once. The doc, the sub's version of a nurse, therapist, priest, whatever, had dark hair pulled back under a cap and the kind of expression that said she'd seen way more than she was paid for. You having nightmares? She asked. No more than usual, I said. What about? She asked. You really want to know? I shot back. I asked, didn't I? So I told her. The sanitized version. Mun in stripes. What where nothing should be wet. Knocks. She made notes on a clipboard. The scratch of her pen sounded too loud in the tiny exam room. You ever feel like you're still dreaming when you wake up? She asked. Sometimes, I said, but I'm pretty sure I'm awake when I hear the knocks. You know about hypnagogic hallucinations? She said. The brain trying to make sense of noise as you fall asleep and wake up, especially in environments with weird constant sound. Like, say, a submarine. I wanted to grab the clipboard and smack her with it. Doc, with all due respect, this started when I was 10, on a trawler, before I knew what a hypno-whatever was. And that doesn't mean your brain isn't replaying the same pattern now, she said evenly. Trauma sticks. It looks for familiar shapes. You hear the hull creak. You remember the knocks. You see condensation. Your brain paints stripes. You think I'm making it up? I think you're scared, she said. And you're on a boat that gives you 1,000 reasons to be. That doesn't make you crazy. It makes you human. You ever had water drip sideways? I asked. She didn't answer that. She put me on a watch rotation that gave me a little more sleep. Slipped me some pills for anxiety. Checked boxes in her reports that meant I wasn't a danger to myself or others. Nothing changed outside. The knocks kept coming. Sometimes faint, like distant taps on the far side of a pipe. Sometimes right under my feet, making the deck jump. We hit the deepest point of that patrol during a system test. I watched the depth numbers climb while the air felt heavier. 400 meters, 600, 8. Water has this way of making you feel small, but it hits different when you know exactly how much is over your head in raw numbers. Boats designed for more, the captain said over the announcing circuit. She can take it. I didn't doubt the boat. I doubted what else was out there with us. At around 900 meters, we went active for a brief calibration ping. Sound rushed out from us like a shout in a cave. The return was wrong, not by much. Just a faint smear fraction of a second after the main echo. A little triple bounce, 3 peaks close together, as if the sound had hit something pressed right up against us and come back in layers. No contacts within safe radius, Harris reported. I stared at the display. 1 ping, 3 little trailing spikes. Boom, boom, boom. The boat held. Steel didn't buckle. Valves didn't fail. We hit test depth and sat there in the crushing dark while engineers in other compartments took notes and made adjustments. All for the sake of some numbers on a spec sheet. Nothing dangerous happened that day. That almost made it worse. See, if the thing had tried to tear us apart at 900 meters, if it had sunk us like crushing an aluminum can, at least there'd be a narrative. The deep got us. We pushed too far. Whatever. What we got instead was this ongoing attention, like a hand on the back of your neck. Not killing you, just reminding you it's there. I started noticing other little things. Condensation trails that curved in ways they shouldn't. Rings of rust around certain bolts that looked a shade darker. The way some people avoided certain spots in the boat without consciously realizing it. They'd step around a patch of deck like it was wet, even when it was dry. I'd hear 3 knocks, flinch, then hear someone else swear under their breath in a compartment over. "You okay?" I'd ask casually. "Yeah," they'd say too fast. "Just thought I heard something." We all pretended together. The closest we came to acknowledging it as a crew was the night the lights went out. Not all the way, just down to emergency levels. 1 second we're cruising along, systems humming, red LEDs and sonar, making everyone look like corpses. The next, there's a hum, a flicker, and the main lights cut. "Power fluctuation," someone called. Switching to backup. Panels blinked. The pitch of the air systems dipped, rose. In that thin, shaky silence while they balanced the load, something hit the hull again. 3 times. Hard. The boat yawned a degree to port. People grabbed for rails. I heard metal creak, this long, agonized sound like it was coming from the bones of the boat. Sounded a lot like our old trawler when a big wake hit just right. I grabbed my console to keep from falling. The depth gauge ticked up a meter, then down like we'd been nudged. "Report," the captain snapped. "Possible underwater landslide," someone suggested. "At this depth," another scoffed. Nobody said what we were all thinking. We got power back. We finished patrol. We surfaced in the middle of nowhere one gray-ass morning to transfer some personnel to a tender, and I remember standing on the sail, blinking at the real sky, feeling this wild relief. You get used to the idea that the world is just bulkheads and pipes. Standing in raw air again is like stepping outside your own skull. Wind in my face. Spray. The flat, endless stretch of sea in every direction. It should have felt freeing. Instead, I found myself staring at the waterline. From up there, you see the hole cut through the surface. The line where steel meets sea. Little waves slapping at black metal. I knew, the way you know a tooth is cracked, that whatever had been knocking from the outside was under that line. Inches from my boots on the other side of the hull. Watching. "Beautiful, isn't it?" the captain said, coming up beside me. "Yeah," I lied. "You look like a man considering falling in," he said. "I grew up on that crap," I said. "I'm just not used to seeing it from this high up." He nodded, eyes on the horizon. "You're from a harbor, right?" "Yes, sir." He was quiet for a second. "You did good work this patrol," he said, "despite your early jitteriness." "Thank you, sir." "You settle your mind about those knocks?" he asked, a hint of humor on the word. I thought about lying. "Not really," I said. His jaw tightened. "Sometimes steel talks," he said. "New techs hear it as someone at the door. Old salts hear it as reassurance. You can pick which one you want." "What if it's neither?" I asked. He shot me a look. "Then you keep it to yourself," he said. "Understood." "Yes, sir." We went back under. The last time I saw it, really saw it, we weren't in the Navy anymore. That makes it sound like some official break. It wasn't. It was time and paperwork and the slow grind of thank you for your service. Now go re-enter a world that doesn't know what to do with you. Mom's health had gotten worse. Years of damp and stress and inhaling glue fumes in badly ventilated fish holds had caught up. I left the boat for good and came back to the waterfront because of course I did. What else was I going to do? Work at a mall? I took a job where my ears still mattered. Offshore monitoring. Imagine a little control room in a low building perched on the edge of a bay. Big windows looking out at gray water, banks of screens showing sonar feeds from undersea cables, pipelines, sensor arrays. You're listening for anything that might threaten the infrastructure. Landslides, anchors, suspicious divers, whatever. It was like sonar, but with more daylight. The rigs we monitored sat way offshore. Deep water. Cold. Companies don't like surprises down there. We did shifts. 12-hour watches, drinking bad coffee, watching slow, scrolling waterfalls of sound. Out past the rigs, the seafloor dropped off into a trench. Not Mariana level, but deep enough that the wires on the map just disappeared into blue. Everyone joked about it. The pit. Don't stare into the pit too long. It'll stare back. Very funny. The first time the triple ping hit one of my screens, I almost threw up. Different system. Different frequencies. Same rhythm. 3 sharp spikes. On a sensor array mounted on one of the rig legs. Nothing else around. No ship within 100 miles. No seismic activity. Just 3 knocks on the steel. I replayed it 3 times. The software tagged it as unknown transient. Got some noise on leg C. I told the guy working the other side of the room. He rolled over on his chair. Show me. I pulled up the waveform. There it was. Boom. 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 He frowned. Equipment glitch, maybe, he said. We've been having some cable issues. He shrugged and went back to his own screens. I logged it. The next night, I heard it on a different sensor. One closer to shore. One installed on the supports of the breakwater. 3 knocks. Water doesn't really transmit sharp impacts the way air does. It smears them, makes them weird. This was clean, precise. Something solid hitting something solid. Got another glitch? The supervisor asked when she saw me frowning at the logs. Yeah, I said. Must be. You ever feel like a pattern is circling you? Boat, ballast tank, subhull, rig leg, breakwater. Everything that touched deep water, everything with an air pocket or a hollow inside it, started sounding haunted. Sometimes late at night, when the bay was calm and the screens were a field of blue, I'd lean back and close my eyes. That's when I'd hear it. Not through the speakers, through the building. We were on piles. The monitoring station wasn't directly over the water, but close enough that high tide lapped at the rocks under the foundation. 3 knocks. Soft sometimes, loud others. I'd open my eyes and stare at the wall. Nothing. The last incident, that was about 2 years ago. Mom was gone by then. She died on a day so rainy the harbor disappeared into its own reflection. Heart finally gave out. Or lungs. Or something in between. The doctor said complications. Like that covered anything. I stayed in her apartment after. I couldn't afford anything else, and the dive shop owner liked me well enough to let me pay what I could. I kept her sewing machine in the corner, even though the sight of it made me feel like my insides were full of silt. I've been on night shift that week. Came home wired and empty around 3 a.m., teeth buzzing with caffeine and sonar ghosts. The tide was high. You could hear it under the floor. A slow boom as swell hit the seawall, rushing suck as it pulled back. I shower because that's what you do when you've been in recycled air all night. Let the hot water beat down. Try not to think about how it went from tank to pipe to shower head to drain, mixing with whatever else had ever gone down there. The bathroom was small. No window, just tile and a mirror that had seen better tenants. When I turned the water off, the silence hit like a physical thing. Then I heard it. Knock. Not from below. From the other side of the bathroom wall. The one that backed onto nothing but open air and then the bay. Tiles clicked softly. Knock. Same spot. Knock. 3. I stared at the wall. A thin crack ran through the grout. Tiny tremors from passing trucks had been working on it for years. It had spidered a little since the last time I'd really looked. Water seeped out of it now. Not much. Just a bead, clear as glass, forming along the line, then sliding down. I watched it crawl sideways. It traced a band across the tiles, then another below it, darkening the white in uneven stripes. The bathroom smelled like hot water and recirculated air. Under the soap, there was this other smell. Cold, metallic, like the first breath you take when a hatch opens into a space that hasn't seen air in a long time. My heart was thudding so loud, I barely heard my own voice. Enough, I said. It didn't stop. Another bead formed. Slid. The stripes thickened. I stepped back until I hit the door. I know it's you, I said. I know you've been following. Boat. Sub. Rig. Breakwater. Pipes. I get it. You've made your fucking point. The knocks didn't come again. Just the slow, steady seep. Why? I asked. What do you want? The crack in the grout pulsed. For a second, just a second, the shape of it shifted. It bulged outward like something pushed from the other side. The grout thinned until I could almost see through. Not far, not clear, just depth. Dark water pressed against a membrane. It was like staring into a porthole deep below the waterline. No glass, just the surface tension of my bathroom wall holding a sea back. And there, in that dark, I saw a suggestion of a curve. Not a full face, just the arc where a skull would be. Stripes on white, closer than it had ever been. I slapped my hand against the tile. I don't know why. Instinct, trying to push back. Cold shot on my palm. It felt like dunking your arm into the ocean in winter. Novodadwachid, just a bite that went straight to bone. For a heartbeat, 2, 3, I felt something press against the other side of the tile where my hand was. It wasn't a hand like mine. It was wider, fingers longer, the space between them wrong. There was no glass, just that impossible thin skin of plaster or whatever the hell the contractor had put there decades ago between my bathroom and something it had never been meant to hold back. The intention in that touch was curious, not friendly, not angry, just curious, like a kid pushing its fingers against an aquarium, watching the fish. Then it was gone. The moisture on the wall sucked back into the crack. My hand flew off the tile like it had been burned. When I looked at my palm, it was pale and wrinkled like I'd been in the bath too long. Thin, dark marks lay across it, 4 faint bands. They faded as I watched. On the other side of the wall, a wave hit the building. The whole place shuddered. I stumbled out of the bathroom and almost tripped over the alarm clock on my nightstand. Same crappy blue thing from my childhood. Broken corner. Faded buttons. I kept out of habit. I picked it up. For the first time in my life, I really listened to it. It ticked. It wasn't supposed to tick. It was digital. No moving hands. Tick, tick, tick. 3 little sounds, then silence. Tick, tick, tick. The rhythm matched the one I heard in my bones. I opened the battery compartment. There were no batteries. The room felt suddenly too small. I set the clock face down in the sink, filled it with water, watched the bubbles rise. I thought some grand thing would happen. Crackles of electricity, sparks, a ghost shrieking out of the drain. Nothing did. The clock just lay there under the surface, blue numbers glowing faintly until they went dark. I left it in the sink and went to the window. The bay stretched out, flat and dark. Harbor lights smeared across it in broken lines. Below my window, the ferry dock creaked. One of the boats was tied up for the night, its hull black and still. Just a few cabin lights glowing soft yellow inside. As I watched, the boat shifted, not because of a wake. There wasn't one. The surface was glass. It moved like something huge had just passed beneath it. The hull dipped, then rose. A second later, the sound hit. 3 deep knocks. They rolled up through the pilings, into the wall, into my chest. No one on the ferry came out to check. The world stayed asleep. The bathroom light flickered behind me. I didn't turn around. I could feel it. Not in one spot anymore. Not confined to a cabin or a tank or a single crack in a wall. It was in all of it. In the pipes, in the pilings, in the spaces below our floors and behind our bulkheads where we never look unless something goes wrong. I used to think the horror was that there was something in the water. Now I think the horror is simpler. We spent our lives punching air pockets into a world that never had them. Hulls, tanks, dams, basements. We made little bubbles of livable space where nothing should be but pressure and dark, and we told ourselves we were safe inside them. But those spaces touch in ways we're not smart enough to map. Pipes run between them. Cracks form. Glass breaks. Something on the other side knocks. I still work at the monitoring station. What else am I going to do? Move inland and pretend every pipe in every building doesn't eventually lead back here. I sit in that glass-fronted room over the bay, headphones on, watching the soundscape of the water scroll by. Every now and then, the system flags an unknown transient. I log it. I tag it. 3 knocks. No apparent source. Sometimes, when it's late and the other tech has his eyes closed pretending not to nap, I reach up and turn the gain down on my channel. I just sit there and listen, past the shifting hiss of currents, past the distant howl of tankers. There it is. Soft sometimes, loud others. Always 3. When the station gets really quiet, when the coffee pot is empty and the only light comes from the screens, I hear something else layered under it now. Not words, just breath. On the wrong side of the hall. When I finally go home and lie down in my narrow bed over the dive shop, the building creaks. The tide pushes at the seawall. Water slaps the concrete below my window. Some nights, nothing happens. Some nights the pipes bang, the drain gurgles, and that cold, wet smell slips under the door. And every so often, just when I start hoping it's lost interest, something knocks on the wall by my head. 3 slow hits. Counting.